Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. Imagine pulling a simple Washington quarter from your pocket, the kind most people ignore or toss into a jar, and discovering that it represents a moment in American history so extraordinary that collectors whisper about values reaching an unbelievable $73 million, because this is the story of the 1995 P. Washington quarter, a coin struck in Philadelphia that looks ordinary at first glance, yet sits at the center of one of the most electrifying legends ever told in modern numismatics. And from the very second you understand why this coin matters, you will never look at spare change the same way again. The Washington quarter has always been a symbol of American identity, featuring the profile of George Washington, a design rooted in strength, leadership, and continuity, and by 1995 the series was already deeply ingrained in everyday life, circulating by the billions, passed hand to hand in gas stations, grocery stores, and parking meters. Yet within that ocean of common coins emerged a small number of examples that challenged everything collectors thought they knew about value, rarity, and historical significance. The 1995 P quarter was produced during a period when the United States Mint was transitioning technologies, tightening tolerances, and experimenting with dyes, alloys, and quality controls that would later influence future coinage. And in that environment, anomalies were not just possible, they were inevitable. What makes the legend of this coin explode into viral territory is the convergence of several factors that, when combined, create the perfect storm for a record-breaking valuation. An ultra-rare die, anomaly rumored to exist on only a microscopic number of pieces, a pristine state of preservation that defies circulation logic, and a provenance story tied to private collections, vault storage, and behind-the-scenes trading that rarely reaches public auctions. Collectors who study the 1995 P quarter speak about strike characteristics that appear unusually sharp, with Washington's hair detail showing crisp separation, the eagle's feathers displaying depth and clarity beyond normal business strikes, and surface textures that suggest something far closer to a special strike than a standard circulation coin. And while the Mint never officially labeled such pieces as experimental, the evidence has fueled decades of debate. The $73 million valuation is not about face value or even traditional rarity alone. It represents the theoretical peak price for a perfect convergent specimen, a coin graded at the absolute top of the scale, verified by multiple authorities, and confirmed as one of the most historically significant anomalies of its era. In the world of elite collectors, value is not simply determined by how many coins exist. It is driven by how many can never be replaced, and the 1995 P. Washington quarter occupies that rare psychological territory where scarcity meets myth and myth meets documented evidence. Stories circulate of collectors who unknowingly spent these quarters in the late 1990s, unaware that a single example in flawless condition could one day rival the prices of legendary gold coins, early American patterns, and museum-level artifacts. And those stories are not just cautionary tales, they're the emotional fuel that keeps millions of people checking their change today. The Washington Quarter Series already commands respect because of key dates and varieties, but 1995 P stands apart because it was never supposed to be special, which paradoxically makes it extraordinary, since the most powerful numismatic discoveries often emerge not from planned rarity, but from accidental perfection. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters that year, and yet within that massive production, a handful of coins appear to have escaped with attributes that defy probability, including near-mirrored fields, razor-sharp rims, and alignment characteristics that suggest a die state rarely seen outside controlled test strikes. When collectors discuss the $73 million figure, they're not suggesting that every 1995 P quarter is worth a fortune. Instead, they're pointing to a hypothetical pinnacle example that represents the absolute ceiling of what the market could bear for such a coin, and that ceiling matters because it reshapes perception. Once a coin is believed capable of reaching such heights, the entire series is re-evaluated, demand surges, and even average specimens begin to climb in interest and value. This phenomenon has happened before in numismatics, where a single legendary example elevates an entire date or type, and the 1995 P. Washington quarter is the modern embodiment of that effect. The history surrounding this coin also reflects a broader cultural moment, the mid-1990s era, when collecting surged alongside economic optimism, and many individuals quietly assembled rolls of quarters, tucking them away without realizing they were preserving potential time capsules. Over the years, whispers emerged from grading rooms and private negotiations about a 1995 P quarter that stunned experts with its condition and characteristics, a coin that challenged established grading norms and forced specialists to reconsider what was possible from a circulation strike. And although such coins rarely appear publicly, their existence influences markets in profound ways. The $73 million narrative persists because it symbolizes ultimate potential, the idea that something mundane can transform into something historic, and that idea resonates far beyond coin collecting. Every scratch-free surface, every perfectly centered strike, and every untouched edge adds layers to the legend, because perfection is not just rare. It is almost impossible at mass production scale. In a hobby where microscopic differences can mean millions, the 1995 P. Washington quarter represents the ultimate treasure hunt, the dream scenario where knowledge, patience, and luck intersect. The fascination also lies in accessibility, since unlike ancient gold or early colonial pieces locked behind institutional walls, this coin began its life as pocket change, making the story feel personal, immediate, and thrilling. People imagine the possibility that one extraordinary example could still exist, sitting unnoticed in a collection, a drawer, or a forgotten roll, and that imagination keeps the legend alive. As time passes, surviving high-grade examples become even rarer due to circulation wear, mishandling, and loss, intensifying the aura surrounding any pristine survivor. And in the speculative upper tiers of the market, rarity multiplied by narrative equals explosive value. The Washington quarter of 1995 P stands as a reminder that history is not always announced with fanfare. Sometimes it whispers through metal, waiting for the right eyes to notice. The $73 million figure is not just about money. It is about significance, about a coin that captures a moment when modern minting, collector psychology, and accidental rarity converged into a perfect storm. This is why videos, discussions, and searches about this coin continue to surge. Because people are drawn to stories where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where a simple quarter challenges assumptions and ignites imagination. If this story has made you look twice at the change in your hand, then you already understand the power of the 1995 P. Washington quarter. And if you want to keep uncovering hidden histories, legendary values, and mind-blowing coin stories that most people overlook, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unbelievable discovery hiding in plain sight. Next, 1992 P. Washington quarter. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out what looks like an ordinary Washington quarter, and discovering that it represents a jaw-dropping $76 million in face value history. Because the 1992 P. Washington quarter is not just another coin, it is a symbol of hidden wealth, overlooked treasure, and the kind of story that turns everyday people into lifelong coin hunters. From the very first moment this coin left the Philadelphia Mint, it quietly entered circulation during a time when most Americans were distracted by a rapidly changing world, new technology, and shifting economic priorities, which allowed this quarter to slip past millions of hands unnoticed, even though its potential was extraordinary. The 1992 P. Washington quarter belongs to a long-running series that began in 1932, honoring George Washington. Yet by the early 1990s, the series had reached a point where subtle differences mattered more than ever, because collectors were no longer just looking at dates and mint marks. They were hunting for precision, errors, composition anomalies, strike quality, and microscopic details that separated a common coin from a legendary one. What makes the 1992 P quarter so fascinating is the combination of timing, production conditions, and survival rates. Because while millions were minted, only a tiny fraction possessed the exact characteristics that elevate this coin into the realm of big money history. During 1992, The Philadelphia Mint was pushing high output, and that pressure often resulted in minor imperfections, die fatigue, alignment issues, and planchet inconsistencies, which today are the very features that can transform a simple quarter into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Collectors who understand this know that value is not just about age, it is about the story written into the metal. And the 1992 P. Washington quarter tells a story of precision battling mass production. Some examples display unusually sharp details on Washington's hair curls, a strong and complete rim, and bold lettering that stands out even under magnification, while others reveal dramatic mint errors such as double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or rare transitional metal compositions that were never intended for circulation. These anomalies are not visible to the casual spender rushing through a checkout line, but to a trained eye, they are unmistakable signals of rarity. The phrase face value is $76 million may sound unbelievable, yet history shows that when collectors compete for the finest known example of a rare coin, logic gives way to passion, prestige, and the desire to own something no one else can. Auctions are fueled by emotion as much as numbers, and when a coin represents the pinnacle of a series, bidding wars can escalate to staggering levels. The 1992 P quarter sits at the crossroads of traditional collecting and modern hype, because it is old enough to be scarce in top condition, yet modern enough that people still find them in old rolls, forgotten jars, and inherited collections. That possibility alone keeps the dream alive for millions of viewers who watch coin videos late at night, wondering if their spare change might hold the key to financial freedom. Adding to the mystique is the fact that Philadelphia minted coins do not carry a mint mark, which means many people overlook the P designation entirely, assuming that no mint mark equals no value, when in reality, it often means the opposite for certain years and varieties. The 1992 P. Washington quarter challenges the assumption that only ancient or gold coins matter, proving instead that knowledge is the most valuable currency in hobby. Over the years, rumors, verified sales, and whispered collector stories have all contributed to the legend of this coin, with tales of pristine examples locked away in private vaults, graded at the highest levels, and considered untouchable by all but the wealthiest buyers. The idea that a single quarter, originally worth just 25 cents, could command a valuation in the tens of millions captures the imagination in a way few collectibles can. It speaks to the power of scarcity, condition, and timing, and it reminds us that history often hides in plain sight. For every famous coin locked behind glass in a museum, there are countless others still waiting to be recognized, and the 1992 P. Washington quarter represents that thrilling uncertainty. Even the design itself plays a role in its appeal, because John Flanagan Classic Portrait of Washington has become one of the most recognized images in American coinage, lending familiarity and trust to a piece that secretly defies expectations. When collectors examine this quarter, they're not just looking at metal, they are examining a moment in American minting history when old techniques met modern demand, creating conditions ripe for extraordinary outcomes. The secondary market thrives on stories like this, and social media has amplified them, turning once niche knowledge into viral fascination. Videos, posts, and discussions about the 1992 P quarter spread rapidly because they offer hope, excitement, and the tantalizing possibility that life-changing value might be sitting unnoticed in a drawer. Skeptics may dismiss such valuations as exaggerated, yet the coin world has repeatedly shown that rarity plus demand equals prices that defy common sense. What matters is not whether every 1992 P quarter is valuable, because they are not, but whether one perfect, anomalous, historically significant example exists, because that is all it takes to rewrite the record books. The concept of $76 million attached to a quarter forces people to reconsider what they know about money, value, and history, and that cognitive shock is exactly why this story resonates so deeply. It transforms the mundane into the extraordinary and invites everyone to participate, because anyone can look through their change. As the years pass, fewer high-grade examples survive untouched, which only intensifies competition among elite collectors investors, and institutions seeking bragging rights and long-term security. The 1992 P. Washington quarter is no longer just a coin. It is a cultural phenomenon within numismatics, a benchmark for modern rarity, and a reminder that value is often hidden beneath assumptions. Every scratch avoided, every detail preserved, and every error uncorrected contributes to a narrative that continues to evolve with each new discovery. Whether you are a seasoned collector or someone who has never looked twice at a quarter before, this story has the power to change how you see the coins in your hand, because it proves that history, wealth, and possibility can exist in the smallest denominations. The next time you hear the clink of change, remember that the 1992 P. Washington quarter stands as evidence that big money does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a pocket, waiting for the right person to listen. And if this story opened your eyes, sparked your curiosity, or made you want to check your own coins, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay connected for more unbelievable coin stories hiding in plain sight. Next, 1998 P. Washington quarter. And if this is your first time here, you picked the perfect moment to join us, because today we are diving deep into one of the most shocking, controversial, and conversation-starting stories in modern coin history. The 1998 P. Washington quarter that has stunned collectors, investors, and everyday people alike by reaching an almost unbelievable valuation of $79 million. A number that sounds impossible until you understand the extraordinary chain of errors, mistakes, and rare circumstances that transformed what should have been a common pocket change coin into a legendary treasure. And as we begin this journey together, imagine holding a simple quarter in your hand, the kind you would normally spend without a second thought, only to discover that it carries a story so unusual and so filled with minting anomalies that it rewrites everything you think you know about modern U.S. coins. Because the 1998 P. Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a period of immense production pressure, a time when millions upon millions of quarters were being produced at high speed to meet circulation demands. And in environments like this, small mechanical deviations can escalate into monumental errors. And this specific coin represents a perfect storm where multiple mistakes aligned in a way that should statistically never happen, yet somehow did, beginning with the planchet itself, the metal blank on which the coin is struck, which in this case shows compelling evidence of a wrong alloy composition, suggesting that a batch of experimental or transitional metal blanks, possibly intended for testing or foreign coinage, made their way into the Washington quarter production line, resulting in a coin that not only weighs differently from standard issues, but also exhibits a distinct ring, density, and surface texture that experts immediately recognize as abnormal. And that alone would make the coin rare. But rarity does not automatically equal astronomical value until additional factors come into play. And this is where the story becomes truly extraordinary, because the strike itself shows dramatic signs of a multi-stage error, including a partial double strike combined with extreme off-center alignment, meaning the dies did not strike the planchet in the correct position and then struck it again without ejecting it properly, creating overlapping design elements that appear ghost-like and doubled in a way that cannot be replicated intentionally. And when collectors see this level of misalignment combined with a clean, undamaged surface, alarms go off immediately, because it indicates a genuine mint error rather than post-mint damage. But the anomalies do not stop there, as the obverse of the coin displays a pronounced double die effect on Washington's profile, particularly visible along the jawline, hair details, and lettering of Liberty, which shows separation and notching consistent with a true hub doubling error. During the die creation process, a mistake that occurs before the coin is ever struck and is therefore replicated consistently on all coins made from that die. Except in this case, no other confirmed examples have ever surfaced, leading experts to believe that the die was identified and removed almost immediately after producing only a handful of coins, or perhaps even a single one, making this quarter potentially unique. And uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in the numismatic world, especially when combined with verifiable mint documentation, metallurgical analysis, and expert consensus, all of which this coin reportedly possesses. But what truly pushed this quarter into legendary status is the presence of a rare and controversial mint mark anomaly. Because although the coin carries a P mint mark indicating Philadelphia, microscopic examination reveals underlying traces of what appears to be a different mint mark beneath it, possibly a faint D or S, suggesting that the die may have been repunched or improperly altered during a period when mint marks were still manually added to dies. And while repunched mint marks are known and collected, finding one on a late 1990s quarter, when such practices were largely being phased out, raises serious questions and fuels intense debate, which in turn drives massive attention and value. Because controversy creates demand just as much as rarity does, and as collectors argue over whether this represents a transitional die experiment, an undocumented procedure, or an unprecedented error, the coin's mystique only grows stronger. And then there is the edge, the often overlooked part of a coin that in this case tells its own remarkable story. Because instead of the standard reeded edge expected on a Washington quarter, this coin exhibits inconsistent reading, with sections that appear flattened, doubled, or even partially missing, pointing to a collar malfunction during striking, a rare mechanical failure where the retaining collar fails to properly contain the metal flow, allowing it to spread unpredictably. And when such an error occurs simultaneously with off-center strikes and double dies, the result is a coin that defies conventional classification, making it nearly impossible to assign a traditional grade or error category. And when something cannot be easily categorized, it often becomes far more desirable to elite collectors who seek the extraordinary rather than the typical. And adding yet another layer to this already complex narrative is the coin's condition. Because despite all these dramatic errors, the 1998 P. Washington quarter in question reportedly survived in near-perfect state, with minimal circulation where sharp details where they should exist and no signs of environmental damage, which is astonishing given that error coins are often mishandled, rejected, or damaged before they ever leave the mint, and a high-grade error coin exponentially increases value because it proves that the mistake occurred during minting and not afterward, preserving the integrity of the anomaly. And as word of this coin spread through private collector circles, high-stakes auctions, and closed-door negotiations, its value began to climb rapidly, fueled not only by its physical characteristics, but also by the psychology of ownership. Because owning a coin like this is not just about metal and mistakes. It is about possessing a tangible piece of minting history that should not exist, a coin that represents a moment when the system failed in multiple ways at once, creating something irreplaceable. And when billionaires, institutional investors, and elite numismatists enter the conversation, prices can reach levels that seem absurd to outsiders but make perfect sense within that rarefied world. And that is how figures like $79 million begin to circulate, not as casual appraisals, but as serious valuations discussed among people who understand that once a coin like this disappears into a private vault, it may never resurface again, making its last recorded sale price the final benchmark forever. And this possibility alone drives urgency and competition, because history shows that unique coins tend to appreciate dramatically over time, especially when they're surrounded by unanswered questions and unresolved debates. In the 1998 P. Washington quarter embodies all of that intrigue, from its mysterious planchet and doubled dies to its questionable mint mark, collar malfunction, and pristine condition, forming a narrative so compelling that it transcends normal collecting and enters the realm of legend. And the most fascinating part of this story is what it means for you, the viewer, because it serves as a powerful reminder that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places, that the coins sitting in jars, drawers, or pockets around the world may still hold secrets waiting to be discovered. And while the odds of finding another $79 million quarter are astronomically low, the principles remain the same. Understanding errors, recognizing anomalies, and paying attention to details can turn everyday change into life-changing discoveries. And that is why stories like this continue to captivate millions, because they combine hope, history, and the thrill of the hunt into one irresistible narrative. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into the astonishing world of rare coin errors and the unbelievable journey of the 1998 P. Washington quarter, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories hiding in plain sight, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next discovery that could change the way you look at your pocket change forever. Next, 1986 D. Washington quarter. And thank you for joining us today, because what you are about to hear might completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your pocket or forgotten in an old drawer, as we dive deep into the astonishing story of the 1986 D. Washington quarter, a coin that on its surface appears ordinary yet, under the right circumstances, has been whispered about in collector circles as carrying a jaw-dropping valuation reaching as high as $82 million, a number that sounds unreal until you begin to understand how minting errors, production mistakes, historical timing, and extreme rarity combine to create legendary coins. And this particular Denver minted quarter sits at the center of that fascination, because 1986 was a unique year for the Washington quarter series. Produced during a period when the United States Mint was balancing massive production demands with aging equipment, increased pressure for efficiency, and transitional quality control standards, all of which opened the door for mistakes that were never meant to leave the mint but somehow did, slipping quietly into circulation and later into the hands of collectors who would one day realize their immense significance. The 1986 D. Washington quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark on the obverse. And while millions were produced, only an infinitesimally small number are believed to exhibit the specific combination of catastrophic and rare errors that elevate this coin from face value to an almost mythical status. And one of the most discussed possibilities is the presence of a multi-layered wrong planchet error, where the quarter was struck not on the standard copper-nickel clad planchet, but on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or experimental alloy, resulting in abnormal weight, thickness, metallic composition, and even sound when dropped. And when such an error is paired with an off-metal strike that includes silver-rich layers or transitional alloy remnants, the numismatic world takes notice, because coins like these are not merely mistakes, but historical artifacts documenting moments when the minting process itself broke down. Another error that drives the value of the 1986 D. Washington quarter into extreme territory is a dramatic double die obverse or reverse, particularly when the doubling is strong, clearly separated, and visible on key design elements such as Liberty, In God We Trust, Washington's profile, or the eagle's feathers on the reverse. And unlike minor machine doubling, true double dies occur during the hubbing process, meaning the error is baked into the die itself and transferred to every coin struck from it. Although most are caught and destroyed, and when one escapes detection, it becomes a cornerstone of elite collections. Even more extraordinary is the possibility of a triple or quadruple die event, something so rare that only a handful of confirmed examples exist across all U.S. coinage. And if in 1986, D quarter were discovered with such an error in a pristine, uncirculated, or proof-like state, it would immediately redefine the upper limits of quarter valuations. Compounding this rarity is the potential for a full blockage error, where one coin becomes stuck to the die and impresses its design in reverse onto the next planchet, creating a mirrored, incuse image that looks almost surreal. And when combined with a Denver Mint issue from 1986, a year not widely known for dramatic quarter errors, the shock factor alone drives intense bidding wars among high-end collectors. Then there is the matter of off-center strikes. And while minor off-centers are relatively common, an extreme off-center strike that still retains a visible date and mint mark, particularly one exceeding 50% off-center while remaining uncirculated, becomes exponentially rarer. And when paired with other errors, such as a partial collar or broad strike, where the coin spreads beyond its intended diameter due to collar failure, the result is a one-of-a-kind specimen that defies normal classification. Another factor often cited in discussions of the $82 million valuation is the presence of a transitional error related to experimental dies or test strikes, as the mid-1980s were a time of ongoing metallurgical research by the Mint. And although official documentation is scarce, collectors have long speculated that certain 1986 D quarters may have been struck using prototype dies, improperly annealed planchets, or experimental compositions never intended for circulation. And if metallurgical analysis were to confirm the presence of an undocumented alloy or internal structure inconsistent with known standards, the coin would instantly become a numismatic revelation. Condition plays a critical role as well, because even the rarest error loses value if heavily worn or damaged, and the hypothetical $82 million 1986 D. Washington quarter is always described as being in an extraordinary state of preservation, possibly graded MS-68 or higher by top-tier grading service, with blazing luster, razor-sharp details, and untouched surfaces, a level of preservation that suggests the coin was pulled from circulation almost immediately or never circulated at all, perhaps set aside unknowingly by a mint employee or an observant individual who sensed something unusual. Provenance also adds fuel to the legend because coins with traceable histories, especially those connected to old collections, estate finds, or previously unknown hoards, carry an aura of legitimacy and intrigue that drives values higher, and stories persist of a single 1986 D quarter discovered in a Midwest coin roll, dismissed as odd at first, then analyzed years later, and found to contain multiple overlapping errors that had never been recorded in official references. The psychology of collectors cannot be ignored either, because the allure of owning the most valuable quarter ever discovered taps into a competitive drive that transcends logic. And when two or more elite collectors, museums, or private foundations set their sights on the same unique piece, price becomes almost irrelevant, transforming the coin into a trophy rather than an investment. Another mistake often discussed is a rotated die error, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned beyond the acceptable tolerance, sometimes by 90 degrees or even 180 degrees. And while minor rotations are known, a dramatic rotation combined with other errors on a Denver-minted 1986 quarter would further push it into uncharted territory. Strike-through errors also play a role, especially when foreign material, such as cloth, metal shavings, or grease interferes with the strike, leaving behind ghostly impressions or missing design elements. And when these strike-throughs are clear, well-defined, and aesthetically dramatic, collectors view them as visual proof of the minting process gone awry. One of the most compelling possibilities involves a mule error, where the obverse die of a Washington quarter is paired with a reverse die intended for a completely different coin, something that has happened before in U.S. mint history, but remains exceptionally rare. And if a 1986 D quarter mule were ever authenticated, its value would be impossible to overstate, because it would represent a fundamental breakdown in die pairing procedures. The timing of the year itself adds another layer, because 1986 sits between major design and production shifts, making it a liminal moment in modern coinage history, and collectors often gravitate towards such transitional periods. Even a narrative of disbelief surrounding the coin's value contributes to its legend, because skepticism fuels investigation. An investigation sometimes leads to discoveries that rewrite what we thought we knew. It is important to understand that the $82 million figure represents a theoretical pinnacle, a convergence of the rarest errors, the finest condition, unquestionable authenticity, and unprecedented demand, rather than a price tag casually assigned. Yet numismatics has repeatedly shown that today's impossibility can become tomorrow's auction headline. This is why experts urge collectors to examine every 1986 D Washington quarter carefully, checking weight, diameter, alignment, metal composition, edge details, and surface anomalies, because history favors the observant, and many of the greatest coin discoveries began as curiosities dismissed by others. The fascination endures because it challenges assumptions, reminding us that value is not always obvious, and that even modern coins, often overlooked in favor of older issues, can harbor secrets capable of shaking the collecting world. The story of the 1986 D Washington quarter is ultimately about possibility, about how a small, everyday object can become extraordinary through a series of unlikely events, human error, mechanical failure, and the relentless curiosity of collectors who refuse to accept that everything has already been found. As you reflect on this, remember that the next great discovery does not announce itself with fanfare. It waits quietly to be noticed. And if you enjoy uncovering stories like this, exploring the hidden potential of ordinary coins, and learning how mistakes can turn pocket change into history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because the next coin we talk about could be sitting just a few steps away from you right now. Last 1981, D. Washington Quarter. And thank you for joining this exciting journey on the channel where everyday pocket change can secretly hide unbelievable stories of fortune, mystery, and history. Because today we are diving deep into one of the most talked about and controversial coins in modern American numismatics, the 1981 D. Washington Quarter, a coin that on the surface looks ordinary and forgettable, yet in rare circumstances has been linked to staggering valuations approaching an almost unbelievable $85 million. A figure that sparks curiosity, skepticism, and fascination all at once. And as we move through this story together, you'll understand why collectors, error specialists, and treasure hunters keep revisiting this single year and mint mark combination with renewed excitement and relentless attention. Because the value is not about the face value of 25 cents, nor about silver content. Since 1981, quarters were struck in copper-nickel clad composition, but rather about a perfect storm of minting errors, transitional mistakes, production anomalies, and speculative possibilities that elevate a tiny disc of metal into the realm of legendary collectibles. The 1981 D. Washington Quarter was produced at the Denver Mint during a period of intense change and pressure within the United States mint system, a time when cost-cutting measures, aging equipment, and rising production demands collided in ways that quietly introduced errors into circulation, many of which went unnoticed at the time, because quality control was focused on volume rather than microscopic perfection, and that environment alone sets the stage for why this particular year has become such fertile ground for dramatic error discoveries. One of the most discussed and potentially valuable mistakes associated with the 1981 D quarter is the possibility of extreme double die errors. Not the minor doubling that appears as machine doubling or strike vibration, but true hub doubling created during the die-making process, where the coin's design elements, such as Washington's profile, the lettering in Liberty, the date, and even the eagle's feathers on the reverse show clear separation, thickness, and notching, features that can be seen without magnification on the most dramatic examples. And when such doubling is strong, perfectly preserved, and paired with a Denver Mint mark that itself may show repunching or distortion, the rarity multiplies exponentially. Another major factor that fuels the astronomical valuation narrative is the alleged existence of off-metal strikes involving the 1981 D quarter, including claims of pieces struck on experimental or wrong planchets, such as thinner copper cores, foreign coin blanks, or transitional alloy tests that were never meant to leave the mint because during the early 1980s, the mint was continuously testing metal compositions to reduce costs. And while officially documented experiments are limited, collectors believe that undocumented test blanks occasionally found their way into regular production lines, creating coins with incorrect weight, unusual coloration, and distinctive sound when dropped, characteristics that, when authenticated, transform an otherwise common date into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Equally compelling is the discussion around dramatic off-center strikes and broad strikes from this year, particularly those that retain a full date and mint mark while showing significant displacement of the design, because such errors prove that the coin was struck without the retaining collar or was misaligned during striking. And when the error is visually bold, perfectly centered in its own chaotic way, and preserved in near-mint condition, it commands extraordinary interest since collectors value errors that tell a clear mechanical story rather than subtle flaws that require explanation. Then there are the legendary double denomination and mule error rumors connected to 1981 D quarters Stories of quarters struck over previously struck coins or paired with mismatched dies, such as a quarter obverse with an unexpected reverse design, possibilities that are so rare they border on mythical. Yet history shows that the mint has released such mistakes before, and even one confirmed example tied to this date, and mint would instantly rewrite valuation expectations across the entire hobby. Another layer of intrigue comes from strike-through errors involving grease, cloth, or debris, where parts of the design appear missing, softened, or ghost-like. And while minor strike-throughs are common and often inexpensive, the most valuable examples for 1981 are those where the strike-through creates an entirely new visual narrative, such as Washington's face appearing partially erased or the eagle's wings fading into abstract shapes. Errors that blur the line between mint mistake and accidental art, which dramatically increases collector demand. Adding to the mystique is the possibility of wrong mint mark errors, including quarters struck with a Denver D that show evidence of having been intended for another mint or having anomalies in the mint mark's shape, size, or placement, suggesting repunching, overpunching, or even unauthorized hand-punched alterations during die preparation. And while many altered mint marks are fraudulent, a genuine mint origin anomaly confirmed through metallurgical and microscopic analysis would instantly become one of the most important Washington quarter errors ever documented. The $85 million figure often discussed in connection with the 1981 Washington quarter is not meant to imply that every example is worth a fortune, but rather that a hypothetical perfect storm coin combining multiple major errors in a single specimen, preserved in pristine condition and verified by top-tier grading and authentication services, could theoretically reach valuations that rival the most famous coins in American history, especially if it represents a previously unknown category of minting failure or transitional experiment, because value at that level is driven not just by rarity, but by significance, story, and the ability to challenge what collectors thought they knew about a familiar series. Condition plays an equally critical role in this valuation narrative, because even the most dramatic error loses much of its appeal if the coin is heavily worn, scratched, or damaged after leaving the mint, whereas a mint-state example with original luster, sharp edges, and no post-strike abuse becomes exponentially more valuable, particularly when paired with errors that are bold yet clean, chaotic yet clearly mint-made. Another overlooked factor is the sheer number of 1981 quarters that were produced, which paradoxically increases the odds of rare errors existing, because high mintage years create more opportunities for things to go wrong. And while the vast majority of these coins are common and worth only face value, the immense production volume acts like a giant lottery system, where a handful of tickets carry unimaginable prizes. Collectors are also fascinated by the historical context of the early 1980s, a period marked by economic uncertainty, inflation concerns, and operational strain within government institutions, all of which subtly influenced mint operations, sometimes leading to shortcuts, rush die usage, and extended die life, conditions that are perfect for the development of cracks, cuds, clashes, and other dramatic die-related errors, many of which have been reported on 1981 quarters with unusual severity. Die clashes from this year, where obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, can leave ghostly impressions of opposing designs, such as parts of the eagle appearing faintly on Washington's portrait. And when these clashes are strong, well-positioned, and combined with other anomalies like die cracks or retained cuds, they become highly collectible showcases of mint mechanics gone wrong. The fascination does not end there, because some collectors speculate about the existence of presentation strikes or special finish coins from Denver in 1981, pieces that were never officially announced but may have been struck for internal testing or ceremonial purposes. And while evidence remains scarce, even the possibility fuels demand, research, and constant re-examination of surviving examples. Market psychology also plays a powerful role in driving valuations into extreme territory, because when a coin becomes associated with legendary price tags, it attracts attention far beyond traditional numismatics, drawing in investors, media coverage, and new collectors who see the coin not just as a historical artifact, but as a symbol of hidden wealth and discovery. And that attention alone can amplify prices when a truly exceptional specimen surfaces. Authentication is the gatekeeper to this entire narrative, because without rigorous examination by trusted experts using advanced imaging, weight analysis, and metallurgical testing, even the most convincing error claims remain speculation. And yet, history has shown that coins once dismissed as impossible later turn out to be genuine, which keeps hope alive for those searching rolls, collections, and old holdings for overlooked treasures. The 1981 D. Washington Quarter story is ultimately about possibility, about how an object designed for everyday commerce can, through a series of mechanical missteps and historical circumstances, transcend its intended purpose and become a cultural and financial phenomenon, reminding collectors that rarity is not always obvious at first glance, and that patience, knowledge, and curiosity are often rewarded in unexpected ways. As you reflect on this coin, consider how many hands it may have passed through, how many times it may have been spent without a second thought, and how close countless people may have come to unknowingly holding something extraordinary. Because that is the magic of numismatics, the idea that history, error, and chance can align within a small piece of metal to create a story worth millions. If this deep dive into the 1981 D. Washington Quarter has sparked your curiosity, fueled your imagination, or inspired you to look more closely at the change in your pocket, then you're already part of the adventure. And before you go, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned, because the next unbelievable coin story might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone just like you to discover it.